Dr. Richard Stone's fist slammed into the nurse's station so hard the monitor screens shook.
"You pathetic, incompetent little mouse."
Spit flew from his mouth as he cornered Sarah Martinez against the medication cart, his designer watch inches from her face.
"That patient almost died because you're too stupid to hang a goddamn IV bag."
Sarah's hands trembled, but not from his rage. They shook because those same hands had once performed an emergency thoracotomy on a dying SEAL operator while Taliban rounds punched through the tent around her. In 60 seconds, a Navy Black Hawk would land on this hospital's roof, and Dr. Stone would learn exactly who he'd been abusing for 8 months. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. This story gets wild, and you won't want to miss what happens when her past catches up with her present. Drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, so I can see how far Sarah's story travels across the world. The fluorescent lights of Harbor Medical Center's emergency department had a particular quality of cruelty at 3:47 a.m. They didn't just illuminate, they exposed. Every stain on the linoleum floor, every exhausted shadow under every eye, every tremor in Sarah Martinez's hands as she stood at the nurse's station, staring at a patient chart she'd already memorized. "Martinez, are you deaf or just monumentally stupid?" Dr. Richard Stone's voice cut through the low hum of overnight activity like a scalpel through skin. He was 42, handsome in that polished news anchor way that photographed well for the hospital's promotional materials. His hair had more product in it than the supply closet. His ego had more square footage than the entire ER. Sarah didn't flinch. 8 months of this had taught her that flinching only made it worse. "Dr. Stone," she said quietly, her voice barely rising above the beep of nearby monitors. "I was just reviewing I don't care if you were reviewing the Magna Carta." Stone slammed a metal clipboard onto the counter with a crack that made the ward clerk jump. "The drunken Base 6 has been waiting 23 minutes for a saline drip. 23 minutes, Martinez. My goldfish could start an IV faster than you." Sarah kept her eyes down, but her peripheral vision, trained to track threats in 360-degree combat zones, caught everything. The other night shift nurses had stopped what they were doing. This was the 3 a.m. entertainment. The ritual humiliation of the hospital ghost. Charge nurse Brenda Morrison, a woman who'd worked at Harbor since the Carter administration, leaned against the medication cart with her arms folded, a slight smirk on her face. Beside her, Jessica Chen, a second-year nurse who'd never met a piece of gossip she didn't weaponize, was already typing something on her phone. "Bay 6 has a documented history of congestive heart failure," Sarah said, her tone flat, almost robotic. "His chart wasn't updated from his last admission, but I noticed bilateral pedal edema and jugular vein distension. A standard saline bolus could trigger acute pulmonary edema. I was waiting for you to approve a modified rate and—" "You noticed?" Stone laughed, a harsh bark that had no humor in it. "You noticed something, Martinez? Let me tell you what I notice. I notice you shake every time an ambulance pulls up. I notice you hide in supply closets. I notice you're about as useful in a trauma situation as a screen door on a submarine." Behind him, Jessica giggled. The sound was soft, calculated to be just loud enough for Sarah to hear. Sarah's hands tightened on the edge of the counter. The trembling increased. Not fear. Never fear. It was adrenaline withdrawal, the body's protest against living at 5% capacity when it had been built to operate at 150. "Hang the bag at standard rate, Martinez. That's an order. And if you second-guess me again, I'll write you up so fast your head will spin back to whatever community college gave you that nursing degree." "State University," Sarah corrected quietly. "University of Washington." "Right. Huskies. Great football team. Danny Oker nursing program, apparently." Stone turned away, already pulling his phone out to check whatever was more important than patient care. Just do what you're told. Sarah walked toward the supply room. Her gait was slightly hunched, shoulders rolled forward, the posture of someone trying to take up less space in the world. But her steps were perfectly silent, despite the cheap hospital clogs. Old habits. As she passed the nurse's station, Brenda's voice carried just loud enough. I give her another month before she washes out. Maybe 2, if she's stubborn. I heard she used to work at a nursing home in Spokane, Jessica said, not bothering to whisper. Like the kind where you're just keeping people comfortable until they die. No real medicine. That's why she can't handle the ER. She's too soft, Brenda agreed. This job requires a backbone. She's got the spine of a jellyfish. Sarah pushed through the supply room door and let it swing shut behind her. For exactly 3 seconds, she allowed the mask to slip. Her posture straightened, her shoulders squared. The vacant, defeated expression vanished, replaced by something cold and predatory. The face of a woman who'd made life and death decisions while mortar rounds detonated 30 meters away. She stared at her reflection in the metal supply cabinet. 34 years old. Looked younger. Light brown hair pulled back in a bun that was deliberately messy, deliberately unprofessional. Scrubs that were one size too large, hiding the lean, athletic build underneath. Gray eyes that had seen things that would break most people. She breathed. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. The trembling slowed, but didn't stop. 8 months, she whispered to her reflection. You can do 8 more. The penance wasn't finished yet. She grabbed the saline bag, the standard one Stone had ordered, and a second, smaller bag with a slower drip rate. She'd hang the one he wanted, wait until he left the floor, then switch it out. The patient would never know how close he'd come to drowning in his own lungs. Because a doctor's ego mattered more than his physiology. It was the 4th time this week she'd quietly corrected Stone's mistakes without him knowing. When she returned to the floor, Bay 6's patient, a man in his mid-50s with the broken capillaries and yellowed eyes of chronic alcoholism, was starting to show signs of respiratory distress. About damn time, Stone muttered, not looking up from his phone. Hang it. Sarah hung the bag. She adjusted the flow rate to what Stone had ordered. She watched the monitor. The patient's oxygen saturation dropped from 94% to 91%. Dr. Stone, she said quietly, his respiratory rate is increasing. 24 breaths per minute. I really think you should learn to shut up and do your job, Martinez. Sarah stepped back. She waited. 90 seconds later, as Stone was walking away to flirt with the pretty pharmaceutical rep who'd brought donuts for the night shift, Sarah adjusted the drip rate down to 75 milliliters per hour and elevated the head of the patient's bed 30 degrees. The man's breathing eased. His O2 sat climbed back to 93%. He never knew he'd almost died. Stone never knew he'd almost killed him. This was Sarah's life now. Invisible competence, silent corrections. The ghost who saved lives in the shadows. It was 4:17 a.m. when the chaos arrived. The automatic doors exploded inward. 2 paramedics burst through, pushing a gurney at a dead run, surrounded by 4 Seattle PD officers with the tight, wired energy of cops who'd just seen something bad. GSW, male, approximately 26 years old, the lead paramedic, a veteran named Marcus she'd worked with dozens of times, shouted over the noise. 2 entry wounds, one to the upper right chest, one to the left thigh. BP is tanking. Started at 110/70, now we're at 88/52 and dropping. Heart rate 134. He's circling the drain. Stone's entire demeanor transformed. The bored, dismissive doctor vanished. In his place appeared the polished, camera-ready trauma surgeon that the hospital put on billboards. "Trauma 1, Stone barked. "Move, people! Martinez, stay the hell out of the way.
Morrison, you're with me. Chen, get the blood bank on the phone. Move!
Sarah pressed herself against the wall as the gurney flew past. She was furniture, a fixture, invisible. But her eyes, those gray eyes that had assessed battlefield casualties in fractions of seconds, tracked everything. The patient was young, Latino, gang tattoos on his neck. His chest wound was spurting arterial blood in rhythmic jets. Bad, but controllable. Stone would pack it, maybe crack the chest if there was cardiac tamponade. But it was the leg wound that made Sarah's breath catch. The entry wound was small, almost hidden by the dark denim of the patient's jeans. But the fabric was wrong. Too stiff, already saturated. And the way his left foot was rotated outward, the way the skin below his knee had a grayish, mottled quality. Femoral artery, completely severed. He had maybe 3 minutes before he bled out. 4, if he was lucky. Stone was already cutting away the patient's shirt, exposing the chest wound.
Possible cardiac tamponade. Get me the thoracotomy kit. We might need to crack him.
Dr. Stone, Sarah said. Her voice was quiet, almost swallowed by the chaos. The leg.
I said stay out of the way.
Stone didn't even turn around.
Morrison, clamp that bleeder. Chen, where's my blood?
Sarah looked at the clock on the wall. 4:19 a.m. She looked at the monitor. Blood pressure, 82/48. She looked at the patient's leg. A dark stain was spreading, slow and insidious, pooled underneath the gurney. 2 minutes, maybe less. Every instinct she'd spent 8 months suppressing screamed at her to move. This was what she'd been trained for. This was what she was built for. A woman didn't survive the SARC pipeline, the most brutal combat medical training in the world, and then stand by while someone bled out from a wound she could fix with her eyes closed. But she'd made a promise. After Somalia, after the mission that went sideways, after she'd made the call that saved 3 lives and cost 2 others. She'd promised herself she was done playing God. She pressed her back harder against the wall.
Pressure's still dropping,
Brenda called out. 78/45. Stone, he's not stabilizing.
Then pack the chest tighter.
Stone's hands moved with practiced precision, but he was focused on the wrong wound.
He's got to be tamponating. We crack him, relieve the pressure. The leg, Sarah said, louder this time.
Dr. Stone, you need to check the... If you don't shut your mouth, Martinez, I swear to God, I will have security remove you from this ER. The patient's eyes rolled back. His skin tone shifted from pale to gray. VTAC, Brenda shouted. He's coding. Sarah closed her eyes. She counted her breathing. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for... screw it. Her eyes snapped open. The mousy, hunched posture evaporated. She moved. To everyone watching, it looked like a blur. One moment, Sarah was against the wall. The next, she was at the foot of the gurney. She didn't ask permission. She didn't wait for orders. She pulled the trauma shears from her pocket, not the standard hospital scissors, but heavy-duty military shears, matte black with a serrated edge that could cut through a penny, and in one violent motion, ripped the patient's jeans from knee to hip. Blood erupted like a geyser, a pulsing arterial fountain that painted the wall 6 feet away in a crimson arc.
What the fuck are you doing?
Brenda shrieked. Stone spun around, his face purple with rage.
Martinez, you just...
Sarah jammed her fist directly into the open wound. The room went silent except for the steady beep of the monitor and the wet sound of Sarah's hand disappearing into the patient's thigh. She didn't flinch. She didn't hesitate. Her fingers, guided by memory and muscle knowledge that bypassed conscious thought, found the severed femoral artery in the mess of torn muscle and fat. She pinched it, hard, against the femur bone. The fountain of blood stopped. Femoral artery completely severed. Sarah's voice was unrecognizable. Not the soft, apologetic mumble of the hospital ghost. This was a flat, authoritative combat report. The chest wound is superficial. Through and through, missed the heart and major vessels.
He wasn't tamponating. He was hypovolemic from the leg. If you'd cracked his chest, the pressure differential would have killed him instantly. Silence. Stone stared at the leg, at Sarah's blood-covered hand buried in the patient's thigh, at the monitor where the heart rhythm was stabilizing, the blood pressure ticking upward. 86/50, 91/55, 94/58.
Jesus Christ,
Marcus, the paramedic, whispered.
How did you see that?
Sarah didn't answer. She was counting pulse beats, calculating blood loss, assessing whether the patient needed whole blood or just packed red cells. Stone's medical training wrestled with his ego. For once, maybe the only time in his career, training won. Vascular clamp, he said, his voice tight. Now. Brenda fumbled with the instrument tray, her hands shaking. She passed the clamp to Stone. He moved in, taking over the artery. I've got it. Step back, Martinez. Sarah released the vessel and stepped away, her hand coated in blood up to her wrist. She held it up in the sterile position, her face already slipping back into that blank, empty expression. Get him to OR2, Stone muttered, not meeting her eyes. Vascular surgery team needs to be here 5 minutes ago. Move! As the trauma team rushed the patient toward the elevators, the tension in Trauma 1 shifted from crisis to confused aftermath. Brenda stayed behind. She stared at Sarah like she was seeing a ghost, or maybe seeing a real person for the first time.
How did you know?
Brenda's voice was suspicious, almost accusatory.
The blood wasn't even visible through the jeans yet. How did you know it was arterial?
Sarah walked to the sink and began scrubbing. The water turned pink, then red, then pink again.
The angle of his foot,
she said, her voice back to its flat monotone.
The modeling of the skin.
The respiratory distress, despite normal lung sounds. Classic presentation of lower extremity arterial compromise with hemorrhagic shock.
That's not basic nursing,
Brenda said slowly.
That's not even what most ER docs would catch.
I read a lot.
What do you read? Military trauma manuals?
Sarah dried her hands on a paper towel. She didn't answer. She walked past Brenda toward the door. I'm going to check on the patient in Bay 6. His lungs sound wet. She left Brenda standing in the blood-spattered trauma bay, questions piling up faster than answers. Brenda walked over to the instrument tray where Sarah had left the trauma shears. She picked them up. They weren't hospital issue, too heavy, too tactical. The handles were worn smooth from years of use. Engraved on the side, almost invisible unless you knew where to look, was a small insignia. A trident, an eagle, an anchor. And below that, in tiny letters, CPOS. Martinez. SARS 8. Brenda frowned. She didn't know what SARC meant. She assumed it was some kind of brand name. She dropped the shears back on the tray. Weird, she muttered. But as she walked out of Trauma 1, something nagged at her. The way Sarah had moved, the precision, the absolute confidence. That wasn't a nurse who'd frozen. That was a nurse who'd done this before. Many times before. In places a lot worse than Seattle. By 6:30 a.m., when the day shift started filtering in and the night crew prepared to hand off their patients, Sarah Martinez was back to being invisible. She'd mopped up the blood in Trauma 1. She'd restocked the supply carts. She'd checked and rechecked every IV line, every medication order, every vital sign on every patient on the floor. Dr. Stone hadn't spoken to her since the save. He'd disappeared into his office to write his operative note. A note that would, Sarah knew from experience, Somehow make the femoral artery catch sound like his idea. She was in the break room, heating up instant oatmeal in the microwave that only worked if you hit it on the left side, when Brenda walked in.
Martinez?
Nurse Morrison.
We need to talk.
Sarah stirred her oatmeal.
I'm off shift in 20 minutes. Can it wait?
No. Brenda closed the break room door.
What the hell was that out there?
A save?
That was more than a save. That was... Brenda struggled for words. That was Special Forces medic level shit. Where did you learn to do that? Sarah took a bite of oatmeal. It was lukewarm and tasted like cardboard.
YouTube?
Don't bullshit me.
I'm not.
Sarah met Brenda's eyes.
I'm really not worth the interrogation, Brenda. I saw a wound. I fixed it. That's the job.
The job is following doctor's orders. The job is keeping people alive. They stared at each other. For a moment, Brenda saw something flicker in Sarah's gray eyes. Something hard and cold and utterly unafraid. Then it vanished, replaced by the vacant, defeated look of the hospital ghost.
I need to finish my charting,
Sarah said quietly.
Excuse me.
She walked out, leaving Brenda with more questions than before. What Brenda didn't know, what nobody at Harbor Medical knew, was that Sarah's phone had been vibrating in her pocket for the last 45 minutes. 3 missed calls, all from the same blocked number, all with the same emergency callback code she'd hoped she'd never see again. Alpha Sierra 9. The code that meant someone, somewhere, needed her to stop being a ghost and start being a weapon again. Sarah's phone vibrated again in her pocket as she walked toward the staff locker room. The emergency callback code flashed across the screen for the 4th time in an hour. She silenced it without reading the message. Not yet. Not here. She pushed through the locker room door and found Jessica Chen standing at the mirror, reapplying lipstick that was 3 shades too bright for a night shift nurse.
Oh, look who it is,
Jessica said without turning around.
Harbor Medical's newest hero. Did you practice that little stunt, or was it just dumb luck?
Sarah opened her locker.
It wasn't a stunt.
Right, because every basic RN knows how to jam their hand into a femoral artery. Jessica capped her lipstick with a sharp click.
You know what I think? I think you got lucky. And now Stone's going to ride your ass even harder because you made him look stupid in front of the paramedics.
Sarah pulled out her jacket. Her phone buzzed again. Alpha Sierra 9.
You should answer that,
Jessica said, watching her in the mirror.
Someone really wants to talk to you.
It's spam.
Spam doesn't call 4 times in an hour. Jessica turned around, her expression shifting from catty to curious.
You got a boyfriend or something? Secret life we don't know about?
Sarah's jaw tightened. Good night, Jessica. She walked out before the questions could multiply. The parking garage was empty at 6:47 a.m., that dead zone between night shift exodus and day shift arrival. Sarah's car, a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a dented bumper and a broken radio, sat in the furthest corner under a flickering light. She was 10 feet from the driver's door when she heard the footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. 2 sets, approaching from opposite directions. Sarah's hand went to her keys, threading them between her fingers. Old habits. The parking garage transformed in her mind. Sight lines, cover positions, exit routes. Sarah Martinez. The voice came from behind her. Deep, familiar. A voice she hadn't heard in 3 years, but would recognize in her sleep. She turned slowly. Commander James Viper Hastings stood 20 feet away, wearing jeans and a dark jacket that didn't quite hide the bulk of body armor underneath. He was 6'4", 240 pounds of muscle and scar tissue. His beard was grayer than she remembered. The scar running down his left cheek, courtesy of shrapnel in Helmand Province, looked deeper. To his left, emerging from behind a concrete pillar, was Lieutenant Marcus Ghost Rivera. Smaller, leaner, with the kind of face that forgot 5 seconds after meeting. That was the point. "You didn't answer your phone," Viper said. Sarah's hand stayed on her keys. "I'm retired." "Nobody retires from what we do. You know that." "I did. 3 years ago. You were there." "I was there when you walked away," Viper corrected. "I didn't agree with it then. I don't agree with it now." Ghost moved closer, his hands visible and empty. "Chief, we need you." "I'm not a chief anymore. I'm a nurse. A bad one, apparently." "Bullshit," Viper said flatly. "We watched the security footage from your ER. That femoral artery save? That was textbook SRC work. You can play dress-up in scrubs all you want, Martinez, but you're still one of us." Sarah's phone buzzed again. She pulled it out and threw it at Viper. He caught it one-handed. "Then you answer it," she said. "Tell whoever's calling that Sarah Martinez died in Somalia. Tell them the woman they're looking for doesn't exist anymore." "She does when 7 operators are trapped 400 feet underwater, and the only person who can save them is standing in a parking garage pretending to be somebody else." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. "What?" Ghost pulled out a tablet, swiped it open, and held it up. The screen showed a grainy satellite image of a ship in dark water. "Shadow vessel Dauntless, North Sea. Rogue wave hit them during an extraction op 6 hours ago. 7 Tier 1 operators in a diving bell. Their CO2 scrubbers are failing. One of them has a collapsed lung and a spinal injury. We can't just pull them up. The decompression will kill them." Sarah stared at the screen. "Send the team from Okinawa." "They're wheels up but won't make it in time. The bell's integrity is compromised. They've got maybe 8 hours before the pressure hull fails." Viper stepped closer. "There are 3 people on this planet certified for hyperbaric combat trauma surgery. 2 are in the Pacific. You're here." "Find someone else." "There is no one else." Viper's voice cracked through the garage. "These are our people, Sarah. Ghost's little brother is in that bell. 23 years old. Kid joined the teams because he wanted to be just like his big brother. Now he's drowning in his own blood at the bottom of the ocean, and the only person who can save him is telling me to find someone else." Ghost's face remained impassive, but Sarah saw his jaw muscles working, saw the slight tremor in his hand holding the tablet. "I can't," Sarah whispered. "Can't or won't?" "Both. Somalia wasn't your fault. 2 men died because of my call. 3 men lived because of your call." Viper closed the distance between them. "You made the right decision. The board cleared you. The admiral cleared you. The only person who hasn't cleared you is you." Sarah looked away. "I made a promise. No more battlefields. No more impossible choices." "This isn't a battlefield. It's a rescue." "Every mission is a battlefield when people's lives are in your hands." Ghost spoke for the first time, his voice quiet. "His name is Danny. Danny Rivera. He plays guitar like shit and tells worse jokes. He called me last week, said he finally worked up the courage to ask out this girl he's been crushing on for 2 years. Said if the mission went well, he was going to propose when he got back stateside." Sarah closed her eyes. "He's scared, Chief," Ghost continued. "They all are. They're in a metal coffin, running out of air, and the only thing keeping them alive is the hope that someone's coming for them. That you're coming for them." "I hang IV bags now," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I mop floors. I let doctors scream at me. That's all I'm good for anymore." "You saved a man's life 4 hours ago." "That was different." "How?" "Because he was right in front of me. Because I didn't have time to think about it." Sarah's hands were shaking again, worse now.
You want me to dive 400 feet into the North Sea, perform surgery in a pressurized chamber while a storm tears the ocean apart, and make decisions that will either save 7 men or kill them.
That's not medicine. That's playing God. And I'm done playing God.
Viper and Ghost exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them.
Okay, Viper said quietly. Okay, we'll find another way.
He turned to leave. Ghost followed. Sarah stood there, keys still threaded through her fingers, watching them walk away. They made it 15 feet before her voice stopped them.
What's the dive depth?
Viper turned back. 420 feet, mixed gas, 90-minute bottom time minimum. Water temperature? 38 degrees. Storm surge creating 6 to 8 foot swells at surface level. The spinal injury. What vertebrae? T7 fracture with possible cord compression. Patient is paraplegic below the waist, but maintaining upper body function. Sarah's brain was already running calculations. Gas mixtures, decompression schedules, surgical protocols under pressure. The collapsed lung. Tension pneumothorax? Affirmative. Mediastinal shift. They're handbagging him, but he's fading. You can't needle decompress at that depth. The pressure differential will cause a massive air embolism. We know. That's why we need you. Sarah looked at her car, at the hospital behind her, at the life she'd built out of penance and invisibility. Then she looked at Ghost's face, saw the fear he was hiding behind his training. I need full mission parameters, she said. Equipment manifest, dive team roster, medical history on all 7 operators, and I need it 5 minutes ago. The tension broke. Ghost actually smiled. Helo's on the roof, Viper said. Gear's already loaded. We brief en route. The roof? This hospital doesn't have an active helipad. It does now. Sarah started walking toward the hospital entrance. I'm going to need to make a stop at the pharmacy. Whatever you need. I'm serious. The hospital's chemlock. I need authorization codes that don't exist on civilian paperwork. Viper pulled out his phone. Admiral Brooks is already on it. By the time you get there, you'll have full DoD override authority. They moved through the parking garage, their footsteps echoing in the concrete chamber. Sarah's mind was already 1,000 miles away, running through protocols she hadn't used in 3 years. One more thing, she said. Name it. Dr. Stone, the trauma surgeon. He's going to try to stop me. Let him try. They took the service elevator to avoid the main ER. The doors opened on the 8th floor, administration and pharmacy. The hallway was empty except for one person. Paul Henderson, the head pharmacist, was already waiting at the secure window. He was 62, balding, and had the personality of a particularly suspicious accountant. He once made a surgeon wait 35 minutes for acetaminophen because the order was missing a patient weight. Martinez, he said slowly. What's going on? I got a call from someone claiming to be a Navy admiral. Said you'd be coming. Said I should open the restricted cage. Sarah approached the window. The woman who'd been invisible for 8 months was gone. The woman who walked up to Paul Henderson moved with the coiled precision of a trained operator. I need the emergency chem pack, she said. Atropine auto-injectors, 2 PAM chloride, the whole kit. That's for mass casualty events. Chemical attacks. I can't just... Authorization code Alpha Sierra 9, Sarah interrupted. Department of Defense override. Verify it. Paul's hands shook as he typed into his computer. His eyes went wide. This is real, he whispered. This is actually real. The kit, now! Paul unlocked the cage with trembling fingers. Sarah vaulted over the counter, a move that made him jump, and grabbed 3 boxes of auto-injectors plus a bag of IV saline.
Call down to the ER, she ordered.
Tell them to seal trauma 1 and 2. Positive pressure ventilation only. If anyone asks why, tell them it's a CDC drill. A drill? Martinez, what the hell is happening?
People are going to live or die based on what happens in the next 8 hours. That's what's happening. She was halfway to the stairwell when Paul called after her.
Sarah, the roof access door is locked. You don't have the code.
Sarah didn't slow down. I'll make my own door.
The stairwell to the roof was industrial concrete and rusted metal. Sarah took the stairs 3 at a time, Viper and Ghost behind her. At the top, a heavy steel door blocked access to the helipad. The electronic keypad blinked red. Sarah examined it for exactly 2 seconds. Then she took 3 steps back. You're not seriously going to, Ghost started. Sarah drove her heel into the door mechanism with every ounce of force she had. The metal shrieked. The lock housing cracked. She hit it again. Again. The door burst open. Cold wind hit them like a wall. The roof of Harbor Medical was a disaster. An inactive helipad covered in debris, broken HVAC units, and stacked pallets that maintenance had been meaning to move for 6 months. Debris on the LZ, Viper muttered. We need to clear it. They spread out, moving with synchronized efficiency. Sarah grabbed pallets that weighed 80 pounds and threw them over the edge like they were cardboard. Ghost kicked broken equipment into the stairwell. Viper marked the landing zone with chemical light sticks. Inbound in 2 minutes, Viper said, pressing his radio. Mark the zone clear. That's when the roof access door burst open again. Mr. Gerald Henderson, no relation to Paul the pharmacist, the hospital administrator, exploded onto the roof, red-faced and wheezing. Behind him came 2 security guards, Miller and Davis, who normally spent their shifts dealing with drunk patients and lost visitors. And behind them, immaculate in his white coat, came Dr. Richard Stone. Martinez! Henderson screamed over the wind. What the hell do you think you're doing? Sarah didn't stop moving. She dragged the last pallet to the edge. Clearing an LZ. You've destroyed hospital property. You've violated a dozen safety protocols. I'm calling the police.
Please don't, Viper said calmly. We're kind of in a hurry.
Stone pointed a manicured finger at Sarah.
I knew you were unstable. I knew it. This is a psychotic break. She's having a complete mental breakdown. The sound started as a vibration in their bones. Then it became a rhythmic thumping that shook the windows of the building below. Swap, swap, swap. Stone looked up. His face went pale. What is that? Sarah pulled a set of light wands from her pocket and began signaling.
Arms crossed in an X. Hold position. Stand by. The Black Hawk appeared over the edge of the building like a monster from the deep. It wasn't a sleek medical helicopter. This was a military war machine. Matte black, no markings, a minigun visible in the open door. The rotor wash hit them like a hurricane. Henderson lost his footing and fell. Miller grabbed the doorframe to keep from being blown off the roof. Stone's carefully styled hair disintegrated into chaos.
But Sarah stood tall, arms raised, directing the pilot with hand signals that hadn't changed since World War II.
The helicopter held a low hover, wheels inches from the concrete. The side door slid open. 4 men in full tactical gear jumped out, 2 of them carrying a 5th man between them on a stretcher. The team leader hit the roof and immediately locked eyes with Sarah. He was massive, 6'5", 260, with a beard and a face that looked like it had been through a wood chipper. He snapped to attention and rendered a crisp salute. Chief Martinez, asset secure but fading fast. Direct VX2 exposure. Skin contact 7 minutes ago. We decontaminated in flight, but he needs the antidote now. Sarah didn't return the salute. Civilians don't salute. She grabbed the team leader's vest. Did you cut all his gear? Affirmative, double bagged, but we had no water for a full decon.
Get him to the door. Don't touch anyone. Don't let anyone touch you.
She turned to Stone, who was trying to stand up against the rotor wash. Sarah marched over, grabbed him by his white coat, and pulled him close enough that their faces were inches apart.
Dr. Stone,
she said, her voice cutting through the helicopter noise like a blade.
I am commandeering your trauma center. You are going to clear the hallway. You are going to tell Nurse Morrison to prep 4 IV lines with atropine. And you are going to stay out of my way.
Do you understand me? Stone stared at the armed operators behind her, at the helicopter that had just landed on his hospital, at the woman he'd been abusing for 8 months, who was now giving him orders with the authority of someone used to being obeyed.
Yes,
he stammered. Say it louder.
Yes, I understand.
Then move. The group burst through the stairwell door like a tactical breach. Sarah led the way, running down 8 flights of stairs at a pace that left Henderson wheezing 3 floors up. The SEALs followed, carrying their dying teammate between them. Stone stumbled after them, his polished shoes slipping on the concrete steps.
Trauma 1!
Sarah shouted as they hit the ER floor.
Clear it, now!
The entire emergency department froze. Patients stopped moaning. Nurses dropped their charts. A woman holding her crying toddler actually backed against the wall. The sight was surreal. A nurse they'd dismissed as incompetent, leading 4 armed operators carrying a seizing man through the double doors. Brenda Morrison stood at the central station, her mouth open.
Martinez? What the hell?
Clear Trauma 1! Sarah's voice wasn't a request. It was a combat order. Masks on everyone. N95 minimum. Move the patient in Bay 3 to Bay 7. Do it now!
You can't just…
Brenda! Sarah stopped, turned, and looked at the charge nurse with eyes that could cut glass. That man is dying from VX2 nerve agent exposure. In approximately 90 seconds, the gas residue on his uniform is going to start off-gassing. If we don't get him isolated and treated, it will seep into the HVAC system and kill everyone in the ICU. So unless you want to explain to 60 families why their loved ones stopped breathing, clear the goddamn room. Brenda's face went white. She grabbed the phone. Code Silver, Trauma 1, chemical exposure. Everyone out. Now! Staff scattered like startled birds. Jessica Chen grabbed a crash cart and ran. An orderly who'd been flirting with a ward clerk suddenly remembered he had somewhere else to be. The SEALs carried their teammate into Trauma 1 and laid him on the bed. The young operator, couldn't be more than 24, was seizing violently. His skin was gray. Foam gathered at the corners of his mouth. His pupils were pinned to the size of needle points. Vitals, Sarah snapped, pulling on gloves. Heart rate 176. BP 180 over 110. Oxygen sat 67% and dropping. The SEAL medic who'd been handbagging him during the flight was sweating through his tactical gear. I've been ventilating manually, but he's fighting the bag. His muscles are locked up. Sarah grabbed a laryngoscope. Ghost, hold his head. Viper, hold his legs. I need an airway. Stone burst into the room, followed by Brenda. You can't intubate without my authorization. Dr. Stone, Sarah said without looking at him. If you say one more word, these gentlemen are going to remove you from this room, probably through the wall. Viper turned to Stone. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. She said stand down. Stone backed against the wall, his expensive watch catching the light. Sarah slid the tube down the operator's throat with a precision that made it look easy. It wasn't. The patient's jaw was locked from the nerve agent, his airway swollen from exposure. I'm in. Bag him. She grabbed the operator's wrist, checking his pulse. Talk to me, kid. Stay with us. The young SEAL's eyes fluttered open. They were filled with terror and recognition. Chief, he whispered around the tube. You came. I never left, soldier. Sarah looked up at Ghost. This is Danny? Ghost nodded, his jaw tight. Sarah pulled the emergency chem pack from her bag. Inside were auto-injectors of atropine and 2 PAM chloride, the only antidotes for nerve agent poisoning. This is experimental, Stone said from the wall. Not FDA approved. If you inject that and he dies, it's murder. Sarah loaded the first syringe. If I don't inject this, he's dead in 90 seconds. Brenda, push 2 milligrams of atropine, followed by 600 milligrams of pralidoxime.
Now. Brenda hesitated, looking at Stone. Do it! Stone yelled, his composure finally cracking. Just do what she says. Sarah injected the experimental antidote directly into Danny's thigh. The room held its breath. The monitor screamed, heart rate spiking, blood pressure crashing.
He's coding, Brenda shouted. Asystole!
No, he's not, Sarah said calmly, her fingers on his carotid. He's resetting. Watch. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. The flat line stretched across the monitor. Then, beep. A slow, strong heartbeat. Beep, beep, beep. Sinus rhythm, Sarah announced. BP stabilizing. Oxygen coming up. 78, 85, 91. She exhaled slowly and patted Danny on the shoulder. Welcome back, kid. Viper slumped against the wall, his face showing relief for the first time. Jesus Christ, Martinez. That was close. Too close. Sarah began stripping off her contaminated gloves. Get him to ICU. Full isolation protocol. I want blood work every 4 hours.
If his cholinesterase levels drop again, page me immediately.
You're leaving?
Ghost asked. I have a dive to prep for. The hell you do. The new voice came from the doorway. Admiral Frank Brooks stood there in full dress whites, ribbons stacked 6 rows deep on his chest. He was 63, built like a fire hydrant, with silver hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. Behind him stood 2 men in dark suits with the dead eyes of federal agents. Sarah straightened. Old instincts. Admiral? Chief Martinez. Brooks walked into the room, his eyes scanning the scene. I should have known. When I heard a civilian hospital had successfully treated VX2 exposure, I knew it had to be you. Sir, I'm retired. Not anymore. Brooks pulled a folder from his aide's hands. The President has authorized your immediate reactivation, effective 10 minutes ago. Sarah looked at the folder like it was a live grenade. Sir, I have a contract with this hospital. I have responsibilities. We'll buy the hospital if we have to, Brooks said flatly. Martinez, we have 7 men dying in the North Sea. Your team refuses to deploy without you. I need you suited up and on a C-17 to Norway in 30 minutes. The room had gone completely silent. Even Stone was staring. What's the current status? Sarah asked. Brooks nodded to his aide, who pulled out a tablet. Diving bell is at 420 feet. Storm's getting worse. 12-foot swells at surface level. The bell's structural integrity is compromised. They're estimating 6 hours before catastrophic failure. The spinal injury? T7 fracture with possible cord compression. The patient is Lieutenant Kyle Morrison, age 27, paraplegic below the waist but maintaining upper body function. Sarah went very still. Morrison? Any relation to Brenda Morrison? Brooks glanced at Brenda, who had frozen with a blood pressure cuff in her hands. Her nephew, Brooks said quietly. Brenda dropped the cuff. Kyle? Kyle's in that bell? I'm sorry, ma'am. The mission was classified. We couldn't. He told me he was on a training exercise in Virginia. Brenda's voice cracked. He called me 2 days ago, said he'd be home for Thanksgiving. He lied to protect you, Sarah said gently. It's what we do. Brenda looked at Sarah like she was seeing her for the first time.
You can save him? I can try. Then go.
Brenda wiped her eyes roughly.
Go get my nephew.
Brooks handed Sarah the folder. Full mission parameters, equipment manifest, medical histories. The dive team is already en route to the North Sea. You'll link up with them on the support vessel. Sarah opened the folder. Her eyes scanned the data with the speed of someone who'd read thousands of mission briefs.
This is insane, she said. The pressure at that depth, the water temperature, the storm conditions. This isn't a dive, it's a suicide mission.
Which is why we need the best.
I haven't done a deep dive in 3 years.
You've done this exact scenario in training 47 times. You wrote the protocol for hyperbaric trauma surgery.
Training isn't real life.
Neither is letting 7 operators die because you're afraid of making another hard call. The words hit like a punch. Sarah's hands tightened on the folder. Stone, who had been quiet for a record-breaking 5 minutes, finally spoke up. She has a shift to finish. She can't just abandon her post. Sarah pulled her hospital ID badge from her pocket, the one that said S. Martinez, RN, support staff, and walked over to Stone. She dropped it into the pocket of his white coat.
You're right, Doctor. I am abandoning my post.
She stepped closer.
For 8 months, I've watched you humiliate nurses who know more than you. I've watched you ignore patients because their insurance wasn't good enough. I've fixed your mistakes in the dark so you could shine in the light.
Stone's face went red.
You can't talk to me. I just saved a man from nerve agent poisoning, while you stood against that wall doing nothing. I fixed a femoral artery bleed you missed because you were too busy checking your phone.
And now I'm going to dive to the bottom of the North Sea to save 7 men, including the nephew of the nurse you've been mocking for years. She turned to Brooks.
I need gear.
Already loaded on the helicopter.
I need a dive team I can trust.
Hand-picked. 3 of them trained under you at Little Creek. Sarah looked at Viper and Ghost.
You two coming?
Wouldn't miss it, Viper said.
She looked at Danny, now stable and breathing on his own.
She looked at Brenda, whose eyes were wet with tears and hope. She looked at the life she'd built out of penance and invisibility. Then she walked out of Trauma 1, without looking back. The entire ER staff lined the hallway. They parted like the Red Sea as Sarah moved through them, flanked by SEALs and federal agents. Jessica Chen stood with her phone out, filming. An elderly patient in a wheelchair actually saluted. Henderson, the administrator, tried one last time. Ms. Martinez, if you leave this hospital, you're terminated. Do you understand? Sarah stopped, turned.
Mr. Henderson, I'm going to tell you something I should have said 8 months ago. This hospital is broken. You've let Dr. Stone create a culture of fear and incompetence. You've let good nurses quit because they couldn't take the abuse. You've prioritized profit over patience.
That's not.
When I get back from the North Sea, you and I are going to have a very different conversation.
One where I explain exactly how the Department of Defense feels about medical facilities that mistreat their personnel. She kept walking. They reached the roof access. The Black Hawk was still there, rotors spinning, ready for immediate departure. Sarah climbed aboard. The gear was already laid out: dry suit, dive harness, underwater medical kit. She began suiting up with the efficiency of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. Viper sat across from her, checking his weapon. You okay?
No.
Good. You'd be crazy if you were. Ghost handed her a tablet with the mission data. Dive depth is 423 feet. Bottom time is 90 minutes minimum. You'll be on a trimix, 10% oxygen, 40% helium, 50% nitrogen. Sarah studied the numbers.
That's a long decompression schedule.
4 hours. We've got a chamber ready on the support ship.
What about the collapsed lung? I can't needle decompress at that depth.
We know. You'll have to do a surgical thoracotomy inside the bell. Sarah looked up.
A chest tube insertion in a pressurized chamber during a storm? Have you lost your mind?
Probably. Ghost's expression was grim. But Danny's in that bell. My little brother. And I'm asking you to save him.
The helicopter lifted off, banking hard over Seattle. Sarah watched Harbor Medical shrink below them. Brooks sat next to her, his face serious.
Martinez, I need you to understand something. This mission is black. Doesn't exist. If something goes wrong, we can't extract you. If you die down there, your family gets a folded flag and a story about a training accident.
I don't have family.
Everyone has someone. Sarah thought about Brenda Morrison, standing in that trauma bay, learning her nephew was dying at the bottom of the ocean.
Then make sure I don't die, she said.
The C-17 cargo plane was waiting at Joint Base Lewis McChord. Sarah walked up the ramp still wearing her hospital scrubs under the tactical gear. The plane's cargo hold was packed with dive equipment, medical supplies, and a team of 10 operators she'd trained with years ago. They stood when she entered, every single one of them.
"Chief on deck," someone called out.
"As you were," Sarah said quietly.
"We've got work to do."
The plane's engines roared to life. Sarah strapped into a jump seat and closed her eyes. She was going back to war, and this time, everyone was coming home alive. Or she was dying trying. The flight to Norway took 11 hours. Sarah spent the first 2 reviewing medical protocols. She spent the next 3 sleeping. The kind of combat sleep where you're half awake and ready to move. She spent the final 6 running through the dive sequence in her head, over and over. When they landed at Håkonsvern Naval Base, a Norwegian Sea King helicopter was waiting to take them to the support vessel. The storm had gotten worse. The Sea King pitched and yawed in the wind, rain hammering the fuselage. Sarah could see the North Sea below, black water churned white with foam, waves that looked like mountains.
"Jesus," Ghost muttered. "We're really doing this?" "We're really doing this," Sarah confirmed.
The support vessel, a retrofitted oil platform tender called the Mjolnir, appeared through the rain. The helicopter set down hard on the deck. Sarah jumped out before the wheels stopped moving. A Norwegian dive master was waiting, a huge man with a blonde beard and eyes like chips of ice. "You are the American medic?"
"I am."
"You are insane. The storm is getting worse. The bell's tether is fraying. You will die down there." Sarah pulled on her dive harness.
"Then I'll die doing my job. Where's the bell's last position?"
The dive master led her to a command center packed with monitors and sonar equipment. On the main screen, a small blip showed the diving bell's position, 423 feet down, swinging in the current like a pendulum. "The tether has 11 strands," the dive master explained. 6 have snapped. When the 7th goes, the bell will sink to crush depth in 45 seconds. Everyone inside will die. "How long do we have?" 4 hours, maybe less. Sarah looked at the mission clock. She looked at the storm radar. She looked at the depth gauge. She thought about Danny Rivera seizing in her ER 6 hours ago. She thought about Kyle Morrison, paralyzed and terrified 400 feet below. She thought about Brenda's face when she learned her nephew was dying.
"Get me in the water," Sarah said. "Now? In this storm?" "Right now."
The dive master looked at her like she was crazy. Maybe she was. But crazy was the only thing that was going to bring those 7 men home alive. The water hit Sarah like a freight train made of ice. Even through the dry suit, the cold was shocking. 38 degrees of North Sea hell that wanted to steal the breath from her lungs. The storm above churned the surface into chaos. Waves lifted her 8 feet, then dropped her into troughs that felt like falling off a building. "Chief, you good?" The voice crackled in her earpiece. It was Miller, her dive supervisor on the Mjolnir.
I'm good, Sarah lied. Send me down. The umbilical line went taut. Sarah began her descent into darkness. The first 100 feet were the worst. The surface chaos followed her down, violent currents that spun her like a leaf in a hurricane. Her helmet slammed against her shoulder. The medical kit on her back felt like it weighed 300 pounds. At 150 feet, the chaos stopped. The ocean below the storm was a different world. Silent, black, crushing. Sarah's headlamp cut a narrow beam through the darkness, illuminating nothing but particles of organic matter floating like snow. Her breathing echoed inside the helmet. In, out, in, out. The trimix tasted metallic. Depth 200 feet, Miller's voice said. How's your gas mixture? Sarah checked her gauges. Good, no nitrogen narcosis yet. You'll feel it at 300. Stay sharp. At 250 feet, the pressure started to register. Not pain, exactly, but a sensation of being squeezed from all directions. Her ears popped despite the equalization. Her sinuses ached. At 300 feet, the narcosis hit. It started subtle, a slight euphoria, like the first sip of whiskey. Colors seemed brighter, even though there were no colors down here. Her thoughts slowed, became dreamy. Talk to me, Chief, Miller said. What's 17 times 4? The question cut through the fog. Sarah forced her brain to work. 68. Good. Stay with me. You're at 320. The bell appeared at 390 feet. One moment, there was nothing. The next, Sarah's headlamp caught metal. The diving bell was tilted at 45 degrees, swinging in the current like a corpse on a gallows. The tether cable above it was frayed, individual steel strands sticking out like broken bones. I've got visual, Sarah said. The tether looks worse than the photos. I count 8 broken strands. Copy that. You need to move fast, Chief. That cable's not going to hold. Sarah kicked toward the bell's airlock. The current fought her every inch. She grabbed the exterior handle and pulled herself close. The airlock wheel was jammed. Miller, the wheel won't turn. It's corroded or bent or both. Can you force it? Sarah braced her boots against the hull and pulled. Nothing. The wheel wouldn't budge. Inside the bell, she could hear voices, muffled, desperate. Someone was pounding on the interior hatch. Sarah pulled the dive knife from her harness and used the pommel as a hammer. She struck the wheel mechanism once, twice, 3 times. Metal rang against metal. The wheel groaned, moved. Half an inch. She struck it again. Again. The wheel spun. Sarah cycled the airlock and pulled herself inside. The pressure equalization was violent. Her ears screamed in protest. Then the interior hatch opened. The smell hit her first. Sweat, blood, fear, and the acrid tang of failing CO2 scrubbers. The bell's interior was the size of a large closet, packed with 7 large men in various states of distress. They looked like they'd been through hell. Chief Martinez. The voice came from the back. It belonged to a lieutenant commander named Carson, the team leader. He was pale, exhausted, but conscious. Thank God. We thought... Save it, Sarah interrupted, stripping off her dive helmet. Who's critical? Morrison and Jennings. Morrison's got the spinal injury. Jennings is the lung. Sarah pushed through the cramped space. Kyle Morrison was strapped to a makeshift litter, his face gray with pain. He was conscious, but his eyes were unfocused. Kyle, Sarah said, checking his pupils. I'm Chief Martinez. Your Aunt Brenda sent me. Kyle's eyes focused. Aunt Brenda? She knows I'm here? She knows. And she's going to kill you herself if I don't bring you back alive. Despite everything, Kyle smiled. She would, too.
Sarah moved to Jennings. He was worse.
23 years old, red hair, freckles, and skin that was turning blue. Another operator was handbagging him, forcing air into his lungs. But Jennings was fighting every breath.
How long has he been like this?
3 hours, the operator said. His name tape read Patterson.
The lung collapsed during the decompression when we got hit by the wave. We tried to needle it, but the pressure down here. The pressure differential would cause an air embolism. You did the right thing.
Sarah checked Jennings's chest. His trachea was deviated to the left. His jugular veins were distended. Classic tension pneumothorax.
I need to do a chest tube, here, now.
Carson's face went pale.
Chief, with all due respect, you can't perform surgery in a diving bell during a storm. The movement alone...
The bell lurched violently. Everyone grabbed for handholds. Somewhere above them, metal screamed.
Tether just lost another strand, Miller's voice crackled in Sarah's ear.
You've got maybe 2 hours before that cable snaps. Sarah looked at Jennings. His oxygen saturation was 68%, falling.
I can do this in 8 minutes, Sarah said, but you all need to hold him steady, no matter how much the bell moves.
She opened her medical kit. The surgical thoracostomy kit was designed for this. Compact, efficient, brutal. She pulled out the trocar, a thick metal tube with a sharpened tip.
Patterson, keep bagging him. Carson, hold his shoulders.
Ghost, I need you on his legs. Ghost's eyes widened.
I'm here?
Sarah turned. Ghost was in the corner, his face a mask of professional calm, but his eyes told a different story.
Your little brother?
Sarah asked quietly. Ghost nodded toward a young operator in the back. Danny Rivera was awake now, pale but stable.
He's okay, thanks to you. Then help me save this one.
The bell lurched again, harder this time. Sarah braced herself against the movement and felt for Jennings's ribs. 4th intercostal space, mid-axillary line. She found the landmark by touch.
This is going to hurt, she said. A lot. But he'll breathe better when it's done.
Jennings's eyes locked on hers, terrified, trusting. Sarah didn't hesitate. She drove the trocar between his ribs with controlled force. Jennings screamed. The bell tilted. Sarah's hand slipped. For a fraction of a second, the trocar was in the wrong position. If she pushed it now, she'd puncture his lung, his heart, or both. Sarah froze. Her training and her fear wrestled for control. Chief? Ghost's voice was steady. You got this. Sarah repositioned, found the correct angle, drove the tube home. A hiss of escaping air. Blood spattered her face shield.
Lungs reinflating, she said, checking the valve. Oxygen sat is coming up. 72, 78, 84.
Jennings's breathing eased. Color returned to his skin. Carson exhaled. Jesus Christ, Chief, that was... Not done yet. Sarah turned to Morrison. Kyle, I need to assess your spine. This is going to hurt. Tell me if anything I do makes it worse. She ran her hands down Kyle's spine, feeling for the fracture. At T7, she felt the displacement. Subtle, but there. The vertebra had shifted maybe 2 millimeters, enough to compress the spinal cord.
Can you feel this?
She touched his knee.
No. This?
His ankle.
No. Wiggle your toes.
Nothing. Kyle's face crumpled. I'm never walking again, am I? Sarah met his eyes.
I don't know. The swelling might be causing the paralysis, not the fracture itself. We won't know until we get you to a neurosurgeon. But Kyle, listen to me. Your aunt is waiting for you. Your team needs you. Walking or not walking, you're going home.
The bell shuddered. A metallic groan echoed through the structure.
Chief, you need to get out of there now, Miller's voice was urgent.
We just lost strand number 10.
The cable is at critical failure. Sarah looked around the bell. 7 men, all of them depending on her.
Can we blow the ballast tanks? She asked Carson. Emergency ascent?
The tanks are damaged. We can blow them, but we'll come up too fast. The decompression.
We'll kill everyone, Sarah finished. Unless we do it controlled. How? We've been stuck down here for 6 hours. The decompression schedule is 4 hours minimum. Sarah's mind raced through the physics, the gas laws,
the pressure differentials. We can't decompress in the water, she said slowly. But we can decompress on the ship. They have a hyperbaric chamber on the Mjolnir. If we blow the tanks, surface fast, and get everyone into the chamber within 3 minutes. That's insane, Carson said. The bends take 10 to 15 minutes to cause permanent damage. If we move fast enough, we can beat them. And if we don't? Then we all die down here when that cable snaps. The bell lurched again. This time it didn't settle back. It tilted another 10 degrees. Strand 11 just failed, Miller said. Chief, you're out of time. If you're doing this, do it now. Sarah looked at each man. They were all watching her, waiting for her to make the impossible call. This was Somalia all over again. The mission where she'd had to choose between a slow, careful evacuation and a fast, dangerous one. She'd chosen fast. 3 men lived. 2 died. She'd been second-guessing that call for 3 years. Chief, Ghost said quietly, whatever you decide, we trust you. Sarah closed her eyes, breathed, opened them. Carson, blow the tanks. Everyone grab something and hold on. Miller, I need the Mjolnir's hyperbaric chamber prepped and ready. We're coming up hot and we're coming up fast. Carson reached for the emergency ballast control. This is going to hurt. Everything worth doing hurts, Sarah said. Blow it. Carson pulled the lever. The diving bell shuddered. A massive metallic groan filled the cramped space. Then the sensation of rising. Fast. Too fast. Sarah grabbed a handhold as the bell rocketed upward. The pressure differential was immediate and agonizing. Her ears screamed. Her sinuses felt like they were exploding. Around her, the operators groaned in pain. Jennings started seizing again. Morrison's face contorted. "Stay with me," Sarah shouted. "Count off. I need to hear every voice." Carson, good. Patterson, good. Rodriguez, good. Jennings. The voice was weak. Good. Morrison, good. Rivera, good. Michaels, good. 7 voices. 7 men still conscious. The bell broke the surface like a breaching whale, launching 10 feet into the air before crashing back into the waves. The impact was violent. Sarah's head cracked against the hull. Blood ran down her temple. The exterior hatch blew open. Rain and seawater poured in. Move, move, move! Sarah was already pulling Jennings toward the hatch. We've got 2 minutes before the bends start. The Mjolnir's deck crew was ready. They pulled Jennings out first, then Morrison on his litter. One by one, the operators emerged from the bell. Sarah came out last. Her vision was blurry. Her balance was shot. The nitrogen in her bloodstream was already starting to bubble out of solution. "Chamber!" she yelled. "Get them in the chamber, now!" They ran across the pitching deck. The storm was stronger now, waves crashing over the rails, wind tearing at their clothes. The hyperbaric chamber was a steel cylinder the size of a shipping container. The door was open. The deck crew was shoving operators inside. "Pressure it to 60 feet, Sarah ordered. "Start the decompression schedule immediately." She stumbled toward the chamber. Her legs weren't working right. Her hands were numb. Ghost caught her before she fell. "Come on, Chief. You too." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding from your ears. Get in the chamber." Sarah touched her ear. Her fingers came away red. The deck tilted, or maybe she tilted, hard to tell. Ghost half-carried, half-dragged her to the chamber. She fell through the door. The chamber door sealed with a hiss. Pressure built. Sarah's ears popped violently. Around her, 7 operators lay on bunks, breathing pure oxygen through masks. All 7, still alive.
"Sound off," she managed to say. "Everyone, sound off."
Carson here. Patterson here. Rodriguez here. Jennings here. Morrison here. Rivera here. Michael's here. 7 voices. Sarah closed her eyes. The chamber was decompressing slowly now, following the schedule she'd calculated. 4 hours to normalize pressure. 4 hours to make sure the nitrogen bubbles in their blood didn't cause strokes, heart attacks, paralysis. She'd made the call. The impossible call. And this time, everyone lived.
Ghost sat down next to her, his oxygen mask on. "You did it, Chief." Sarah didn't answer. She was already unconscious. When she woke up, it was 14 hours later. She was in a hospital bed on the Mjolnir. An IV was in her arm. Her head felt like someone had used it for drum practice. Admiral Brooks sat in a chair by the bed, reading a tablet. "Welcome back," he said. "The operators?" "All 7. Stable. Morrison's getting airlifted to a neurosurgery center in Oslo.
Early signs are good. The swelling's going down. He might regain function." Jennings? Breathing on his own. Gave the nurses hell about the food. Sarah closed her eyes.
"Then we're done."
Not quite. Brooks handed her the tablet. "You've been all over the news. Someone on the Mjolnir leaked footage of the extraction. You're a hero."
"I'm a medic."
Same thing, apparently. Sarah looked at the tablet. The headline read, "Navy Medic Saves 7 in Impossible North Sea Rescue." Below it was a photo of her being carried into the hyperbaric chamber, blood streaming from her ears, Ghost holding her up. She looked like hell. She looked like a warrior. "Harbor Medical called," Brooks said casually. 3 times. "Let me guess. They want me back." "They want you as Director of Emergency Medicine. Full authority. Dr. Stone has been placed on probation pending an investigation into his conduct." Sarah smiled. It hurt her face. "Good. There's more. The Secretary of Defense wants to award you the Navy Cross for the dive. The President wants you at the White House for a ceremony." "No. No. I did my job, that's all." Brooks studied her. "You know, for 3 years you've been punishing yourself for Somalia, for making a call that saved 3 lives and cost 2 others. You've been hiding in that hospital, letting people treat you like garbage, because you thought you didn't deserve respect. Sir, I'm not finished. You just made another impossible call. You surfaced 7 men from 400 feet in 2 minutes. By every calculation, they should all be dead or paralyzed. But they're not. Because you're brilliant and brave, and you don't quit." Sarah didn't respond. "The 2 men who died in Somalia," Brooks continued. "I knew them. They knew the risks. They volunteered anyway, and they would be proud as hell of what you did today." Sarah's throat tightened. She didn't trust herself to speak. Brooks stood. "You've got 72 hours of medical leave. Then you're coming back to work. Not as a retired medic playing nurse, as what you actually are." "What's that, sir?" "The best combat medic the Navy's ever had." He left before she could argue. Sarah lay in the hospital bed, listening to the storm raging outside. She thought about Danny Rivera, stable and joking in the ICU. She thought about Kyle Morrison, who might walk again. She thought about 7 men who went home to their families. She thought about the mouse who'd hidden in Harbor Medical for 8 months. That mouse was dead. And Sarah Martinez was finally coming home. 2 weeks later, Sarah Martinez walked through the main entrance of Harbor Medical Center wearing a charcoal gray power suit that cost more than 3 months of her old nursing salary. Her hair was down, styled professionally. Her heels clicked against the linoleum with a rhythm that said she owned every inch of ground she walked on. The ER waiting room went silent. A mother holding a feverish toddler stared. An elderly man with a walker actually stood up straighter. The security guard at the desk, Miller, who'd tried to stop her on the roof, dropped his coffee. Sarah didn't acknowledge any of them. She walked straight toward the double doors that led to the ER floor. Behind her, 4 people in dark suits followed, federal agents, and behind them, Admiral Brooks in full dress whites, ribbons gleaming. Jessica Chen was at the nurses' station, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, did a double take, and nearly dropped her latte.
Oh my God,
Jessica whispered to the ward clerk.
Is that Martinez?
The ward clerk, a woman named Patricia who'd worked at Harbor for 20 years, just nodded.
That's her.
Sarah pushed through the ER doors. The morning shift was in full swing. Nurses checking vitals, orderlies moving gurneys, the controlled chaos of a trauma center. Everything stopped when she entered. Dr. Richard Stone was at the central workstation, reviewing charts with 2 residents. His hair was perfect, as always. His white coat was pristine. But when he looked up and saw Sarah, the color drained from his face.
Martinez,
he said, his voice cracking slightly.
What are you doing here? You were terminated.
I filed the paperwork myself. Actually, doctor, you didn't. The voice came from behind Sarah. Mr. Gerald Henderson, the hospital administrator, stepped forward. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. The Department of Defense blocked the termination, and then they did something else. Henderson pulled out a folder. His hands were shaking. As of 0800 hours this morning, the Department of Defense has invoked the National Critical Capabilities Defense Act. Due to the strategic importance of personnel discovered at this facility, specifically Chief Martinez, the federal government has acquired a controlling stake in Harbor Medical's emergency and trauma departments. Stone's face went from pale to red.
They bought the ER? That's insane. They can't just...
They can, Admiral Brooks interrupted, stepping forward. And they did. Furthermore, we've installed a new director of operations to oversee the transition and ensure that our personnel are treated with the respect and professional standards they deserve. Stone looked around wildly.
Director of Operations? Who? Sarah reached into her blazer and pulled out a new ID badge. She clipped it to her lapel. It was gold with a black stripe. It read, S. Martinez, Director of Emergency Medicine, Board Chair. The silence in the ER was absolute.
You could have heard a cotton ball drop.
You,
Stone whispered.
But you're a nurse. You cleaned floors. You're nobody.
I'm a Master Chief Hospital Corpsman with 20 years of combat experience, Sarah said calmly. I have a PhD in trauma surgery from the Uniformed Services University. I'm certified in hyperbaric medicine, tactical combat casualty care, and advanced cardiac life support. I've performed emergency surgery in 14 countries under conditions you couldn't imagine in your worst nightmares. She took a step closer. Stone backed up against the counter. And yes, Dr. Stone, I also cleaned floors. Because unlike you, I don't think any job is beneath me if it helps the patient. Brenda Morrison pushed through the crowd that had gathered. Her eyes were red. She'd been crying. When she saw Sarah, she started crying again.
You brought him home,
Brenda said, her voice breaking. Kyle called me yesterday from Oslo. He wiggled his toes. The doctors say he might walk again. Sarah's professional mask cracked for just a second. He's a fighter, just like his aunt. Brenda grabbed Sarah in a hug that nearly knocked her off her heels.
Thank you. I don't know how to...
You don't have to thank me. You just have to help me fix this place.
Brenda pulled back, wiping her eyes.
What do you need? I need you to stay on as charge nurse. I need you to help me rebuild a culture where nurses are respected, where patients come first, and where bullies don't get to hide behind medical degrees.
Brenda nodded.
Done.
Sarah turned back to Stone. He was sweating now, his expensive cologne mixing with the smell of fear.
Dr. Stone, we need to discuss your employment status.
I have tenure, Stone said, his voice desperate.
You can't fire me without cause. I'll sue.
I'll go to the medical board.
I have cause, Sarah interrupted. She pulled out another folder and handed it to him. This is a compilation of complaints filed against you over the past 18 months. Harassment, falsification of medical records, negligent patient care, creating a hostile work environment. Should I continue? Stone opened the folder. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it. These are lies.
These nurses are just bitter because I demand excellence. The patient in Bay 6 from 2 weeks ago, Sarah said, the one with congestive heart failure. You ordered a standard saline bolus that would have caused acute pulmonary edema. I changed it when you weren't looking. He lived because I corrected your mistake. That's not the femoral artery bleed. You missed it completely. You were about to crack a chest that didn't need cracking. That patient would be dead if I hadn't intervened.
You got lucky.
Lucky? Sarah's voice could have cut steel.
I saved that man's life, while you stood there screaming about your shoes. And then you wrote me up for insubordination.
Stone's jaw worked, but no sound came out. Admiral Brooks stepped forward. Dr. Stone, you have 2 options. Option 1, you resign immediately. We provide a neutral reference. You leave quietly.
And option 2? Stone asked, his voice barely a whisper.
Option 2, we open a formal investigation. Every complaint gets reviewed. Every patient file gets audited. We contact the medical board, the state licensing bureau, and potentially the district attorney's office regarding falsified records. Your career doesn't just end, it ends in handcuffs. The color drained from Stone's face again.
You can't do this. I'm the best trauma surgeon this hospital has.
Patients request me specifically. Patients request you because you're on the billboards, Brenda said quietly.
But the nurses know the truth. We've been covering for you for years.
Stone looked around the ER. Every nurse was staring at him. No one came to his defense. No one spoke up. He was alone. Sarah stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Stone could hear.
I'm not going to destroy you, Doctor, as much as you might deserve it.
Because despite your ego and your cruelty, you do have good hands. You can be a good surgeon when you're not busy worrying about your hair. Stone's eyes widened slightly.
So here's option 3, Sarah continued. You stay, but you're demoted. Probationary status for 12 months. You work the shifts nobody wants, nights, weekends, holidays. You report to the charge nurse on duty. You do the grunt work, and you learn humility.
You want me to work under nurses? Stone's voice was incredulous.
I want you to work with nurses, as a team. If you can go 12 months without a single complaint, we'll talk about restoring your privileges. If you can't, you're gone.
Stone looked at the floor. His perfect hair, his perfect life, his perfect image, all of it crumbling around him.
I need an answer now, Doctor,
Sarah said. Stone's shoulders sagged. When he spoke, his voice was barely audible.
I'll take option 3.
Good. Report to the charge nurse tomorrow at 6 p.m. You're on night shift. Stone walked away without another word, his white coat trailing behind him like a surrender flag. The ER erupted in whispers and murmurs. Sarah held up her hand for silence.
Listen up, everyone. This hospital is broken. For too long, we've prioritized egos over patience, profits over people, hierarchy over healing. That ends today.
She walked to the center of the room, looking at each person. I don't care if you're a doctor, a nurse, an orderly, or a janitor. In my ER, respect is earned by how you treat patients and how you treat each other. The best idea wins, regardless of whose mouth it comes from. And if I ever hear of anyone being abused, belittled, or silenced, there will be consequences. Is that clear? Nods all around. A few people actually smiled. Good. Now let's get to work. We have patients to take care of. The crowd dispersed. The ER returned to its normal rhythm, but there was something different in the air. Something lighter. Jessica Chen approached Sarah hesitantly. Director Martinez, I need to apologize. I said some things about you. Mean things. I was wrong. Sarah studied her. You were following the pack, I understand that. But here's what you need to understand, Jessica. Words have weight. Gossip destroys morale. If you want to work in my ER, you need to be better. I will be, Jessica said. I promise. Then we're good. Admiral Brooks walked over as Jessica left. That was well done, Chief. Don't call me Chief here. I'm just Sarah. You're never just anything. Brooks handed her another folder. One more thing. The Secretary of Defense still wants to give you the Navy Cross for the North Sea rescue. You can refuse the ceremony, but you can't refuse the medal. It's already been approved. Sarah took the folder. Inside was a commendation letter signed by the President himself. I don't need a medal to do my job, Admiral. I know. That's exactly why you deserve it. Brooks left, taking the federal agents with him. Sarah stood alone in the middle of the ER she now commanded. Her phone buzzed, a text message from an unknown number.
Chief, it's Danny Rivera, Ghost's brother. Wanted you to know I asked that girl out. She said yes. Wedding's next summer. You're invited. We wouldn't be here without you. Sarah smiled. A real smile that reached her eyes.
Another text came through. This one from Kyle Morrison. Aunt Brenda told me you're the new boss. Good. Maybe now she'll stop bragging about me and start bragging about you. P.S. Took 5 steps today. Doctors are freaking out. See you at Christmas. Sarah put her phone away and walked into Trauma 1. Someone had cleaned the blood from the floors, restocked the supplies. The room was ready for the next crisis, the next save, the next impossible decision. She stood there for a moment, remembering the woman she'd been 8 months ago. The ghost, the mouse, the invisible nurse who let people scream at her because she thought she deserved it. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone who'd learned the hardest lesson of all, that penance isn't found in suffering, it's found in service. That respect isn't demanded, it's demonstrated. That heroes don't need recognition. They just need to show up when it matters most. Brenda poked her head into Trauma 1. Director, we've got an incoming trauma. Multi-vehicle accident. 3 critical, 2 serious. ETA 4 minutes. Sarah pulled her hair back into a ponytail, rolled up her sleeves. Get me a trauma gown. I'm scrubbing in. You don't have to, I know. But I'm a medic, Brenda. It's what I do. 4 minutes later, the ambulance doors burst open. Chaos poured in. Paramedics shouting vital signs, blood everywhere. A young woman coding on the gurney. Sarah stepped into the center of the storm. Trauma 1, let's move, people. Brenda, start 2 large-bore IVs. Jessica, hang O-negative blood. Someone get me a thoracotomy kit. This patient's not dying today. The team moved like a machine. Fast, precise, coordinated. No one yelled. No one panicked. No one was invisible. As Sarah's hands worked to save a stranger's life, she thought about the journey that brought her here. From the mountains of Kandahar to the bottom of the North Sea. From invisible to unstoppable. From ghost
to legend. The woman on the gurney gasped, coughed, and opened her eyes.
"Welcome back," Sarah said softly. "You're safe now."
Across the ER, a young nurse, new, timid, barely out of school, watched Sarah work with wide eyes.
Who is she?
The young nurse whispered to Jessica. Jessica smiled.
"That's Director Martinez. She's the best combat medic the Navy ever had. And now she's ours."
Sarah heard the exchange. She didn't acknowledge it. She just kept working, kept saving, kept proving that the most dangerous thing in any hospital isn't the disease or the injury. It's underestimating the quiet ones, because the mouse you ignore today might be the warrior who saves your life tomorrow.